Hello, everyone. My name is Reverend Thomas Coughlin. I've been deaf ever since I grew up. I was born deaf. My parents are both deaf, and also my grandparents are deaf. I'm from New York. I was born in a small town near Canada named Maloney. I have 3 sisters who are all hearing. My oldest 2 sisters are interpreters. They have a good job. My second sister is married to a deaf man. They have a baby girl, and she is just fine. I grew up and I went to school in Rochester, New York, for the deaf. And I was signing every day and learning until I was about 12. My mother and father took me to a camp for deaf children in New York. So I went there for about 2 weeks, and it was a religious camp, so there was nuns there. So my parents had met a nun, and they were chatting with her. And the nun told my mother and father, "Why don't you send your son to a Catholic school for the deaf in Buffalo, New York?" And they offered my parents that idea, and they thought about it, and they said, "Well, is it a good school, and a good religious school, a good environment for your son?" And my parents thought about it, and decided to send me to that school. And it was a really different school. So I was 12, I started going there. For about 8 or 9 years, I attended that school. It was a different environment. Anyway, that school, I learned a lot about religion. The nuns would teach me about God every day. And they would really teach me the important values of the church, how it was important to pray and have a good life. Anyway, when I was about 16 or 17 years old, I became more interested in religion. And then one day, a nun I was in high school, and a nun gave me a book. It was called, let me think, The Less Traveled Road. And I read about a man who himself had become a monk. And he joined the monastery, and for about 30 or 40 years, before he died, he belonged to the monastery. So anyway, that book was about his life. And I read it. I was about 16 or 17 years old at that time. And I became very intrigued with the idea of a man becoming a monk and committing his life to God. And I'd never thought about that before. And I asked the sisters, "Can I have more books?" And they gave them to me, and I read them. And I asked for more, and I became entranced with the idea of becoming a monk, and what a different life. Till I think I was about 19 years old, and I was almost about to graduate. I was a senior, and I thought, oh, what am I going to do after graduation? My parents asked me, "Are you going to go to college? You can go to Gallaudet College." And I said, "Well, I'm not really sure." And I thought about it, and I asked everyone, "Do you think I should go to the monastery?" And everyone said, "No, you can't. You just can't." And I said, "Well, why not?" And they told me, "Well, you're deaf. It's too hard. Communication will be really difficult. It's really important. How would you be able to pray with a whole group if you can't hear?" And I thought, wow, they're right. Everyone who told me no, I agreed with them. It would be hard. But in my heart, I felt, no, of course, I can try it. I want to do it. And it was a debate. People were telling me no, and I was conflicted, and I thought I can do it. So myself, I thought I would go ahead and try to send letters to different places for seminaries, and I would tell them that I was deaf, and the reply was, "No, we can't accept you. You're deaf. It'd be too difficult." So the more I sent out, they would not accept me. Each one I sent out, it was a negative response. And I thought, they're right. The world is not ready for a deaf pastor. So there was one more letter I was going to write, and I explained myself about my life, but I didn't include that I was deaf. I just said, I'm a regular high school student, and I sent it away. And we had communication back and forth, and they didn't know that I was deaf. For about 2, 3, or 4 months, we had a nice conversation. They were encouraging me to get more involved in the church, and they asked me more about my background, where I was from, what the name of my school was that I attended. Oh, and I felt really stuck because St. Mary School for the Deaf, and I thought, oh, that word itself, it's a bad indication that I'm deaf, and I know that they would get that information and they would decline me. So anyway, I wrote the letter, and I put all the words in there, but they must have missed the word that said I was deaf. So I sent it away, and a week later they sent me a response, and I opened the envelope and it said, oh, we didn't know that you were deaf. We didn't know that you were handicapped. We don't know if we can accept a deaf person into our program. It'll be too difficult. We couldn't do it. So I read, and as I read to the bottom, the last line said, it had to ask the school principal for permission to go for more information about myself. So I asked the permission, and he sent them information about my skills, how I'm interested in religion, and they discussed back and forth. And they were deciding whether or not to accept me. I was a deaf boy. Could they accept me into the program? So they asked me to fly there to meet them in person. And I thought, oh gosh, I was really nervous. I've never been included into a group of people that didn't have an interpreter. And this is about 1967, so there was no interpreter. So I was kind of debating on whether or not to go. So finally I flew, and I arrived there. And they asked me if I can understand lips, and I did. So we went into the car and drove to the school. And we arrived at the seminary. And I would have to meet the highest boss in the office. So I went there, and we sat across from each other. He sat at the desk, and I sat there. And someone said, I'm going to introduce you to him. So we shook hands, and we introduced each other. And the first question he asked me was, I was really confused. I thought what he said, I'm not really sure what he said, but he said the first thing that said to me is, how tall are you? And I thought, that's kind of a strange question. I flew all the way here from New York to meet someone, and they wanted to know how tall I was? And I thought that was really strange. How are you? You're deaf. How can you communicate? I could read lips, and I thought, that's a strange question. You can't communicate. You can't talk. I can read lips. How can I? I've been training in school this whole time to read lips. But really, he was asking me how old you are. And they were so stunned. They didn't know that I can communicate by just reading lips. For the whole time, and he told me that the whole time I was worried that you were a deaf person, and how can you communicate? It's impossible. How can we accept you into this program if you can't communicate? But I know now, I understand how he feels. He was nervous as well to accept me into the program, so we're on the same level. For about an hour we sat and chat and getting to know each other, and all the questions he asked me. And he was asking me about the deaf community, and he wondered if we were all the same. And so I stayed for the weekend, and there was a little bit of problems with communication because there was no interpreter, and I don't know if it was a best fit for me. So I went back to school in New York, and I got the letter that I have been accepted in the program for the seminary. And that was the beginning of my challenge before life became easy. So from that whole time, the communication, the environment was so easy, and there was no problem. So after I graduated, I was into the hearing world where everyone was speaking. And so now I have to be going up against challenges and fight to get my way through, and I just have to keep trying. But I'm really thankful that the school taught me how to read lips and how to communicate and how to understand people. It took a lot of courage for me to get into the seminary. So now none of my deaf friends, I couldn't communicate, so I was kind of upset. So the first night, and the seminary is for a bunch of boys who wanted to become priests. And so the first night we were in a group chat, and someone had asked me, what's my name? And I gave him my... And I was really upset because it was really hard for me to communicate. And at the school in New York, and we were in the deaf world, so it was so easy. But now I've come to face new challenges. And I thought, gosh, life was really easier before. What should I do about it? But I kept going forward, and I kept trying. And later, I had met a boy, and I was trying to teach him signs, and we became friends. And that was the first experience I had challenging in the world. Now, my goal after high school, I had gotten into the seminary. So, before I had entered the seminary, I had already gotten my bachelor's in English. So, for 5 years in the seminary, I was training to become a priest. So, we had to have a quiet reflection time. For a whole year, you had to not be able to talk. And then I started theology, but meaning the study of God and the study of philosophy. And I went to classes and I heard a lot of lectures, and there was an interpreter with me. The first semester, I took a test, and I failed the test. The lowest grade. I couldn't believe it. I was so surprised. I said, "What is the problem?" And I realized now it was a different world, a different world. The theology is so different. It's a study of God and philosophy. And I was really depressed about my grade. But I really thought, oh, this is my fault. What am I going to do? So I thought maybe I should quit and maybe go to be a teacher at a deaf school. I thought maybe that would be easier. So I figured I would try again. So I took the test again. For 2 weeks, I studied for 2 whole weeks, and I finally took the test, and I passed with a C. All right, I know now that I need to study harder. And I noticed a lot of the students in my class were studying, and it was really easy for them to study and take the test. But being deaf, I missed a lot of information, and I started to read more and become more focused and more aggressive, and finally I caught up. For 4 years, and I passed, and I've got my bachelor's degree. And I passed, and I couldn't believe it. About 38 students passed, and not everyone. 38 students tried to take the test, and not everyone passed. And I would ask everyone, "Did you take? Did you pass?" And I was asking everyone, "Did you fail?" And they thought that I had failed. First, I know it was important to study hard. That's the key to success. Also, your skills need to improve. Your skills to read need to improve. I really thank my parents for teaching me how to encourage me to read and to see how important it is to read a lot. And that's how you're going to develop your skills, by reading. Reading is also a big key for success. Without reading, you won't be able to be successful in life. It's impossible. So finally I was ordained to become a priest. And I was the first deaf man to become ordained in all of North America. There's other deaf people in America too, in Europe, and 4 or 5 other ones, but I was the first in the United States. I felt really proud to make it. I was really eager to become a priest and start my career. So I was asked to work for an organization for the deaf and deaf religious. For 4 years, my last year, I traveled all over the world, to Japan, to the Philippine Islands, to India, Malaysia, all over the world. I met many different people. I can't believe how much I learned about different people's stories and their lives. All the information, it impacted me. And I really took it in. And I saw a lot of deaf people, and I wanted to know how I can help them to find their own skills and be successful in their own life. You need to be really aggressive and go out and try to get things for yourself. You can't give up. You can't just accept it every day. No, keep trying. You can do it. It's really important. Never give up. So for 13 years, and time just went by so fast. It's hard to describe how fast time went by. And now I've moved to Hawaii. And for about 3 or 4 years, I helped develop a program, and they wanted me to help. So I quit my job in New York and I moved here to Hawaii. It's a different culture here. There's Christian people, Japanese, Korean people, all different sorts of cultures. It's really interesting to work here for 3 years. My first year, I also set up a summer youth camp, just like in New York. And I set it up, and they didn't have any money, so it was really hard to establish it. So I worked to collect money. So I needed $1,000. And for 9 years, the program was very successful. And for 3 months, we continued. Well, a problem had arisen, though. A nurse in New York required me to have documentation, and they were really strict. So I decided to become a nurse myself. So I went to University of Washington, and the same situation occurred. Are you deaf? You can't communicate. You're not going to be able to. So again, this had happened. And once again, I sat and I communicated with them. Yes, I can read lips. Yes. It would be really difficult, but the more problem was their attitude about deaf people. And no one even wanted to talk to me. I would try to sit and explain to them and be friendly. And I wanted to take courses to become a nurse. Finally, they accepted me into nursing school. And I just started the program for a month. It's really not easy. It's more difficult than theology. There's more communication with patients. I need to use a special electronic hearing aid so I can communicate. It's a different world of medicine that I really never knew about. And I found out that you must know a lot about vocabulary, more than before. And I didn't really have a background in medicine or neurology, studying all the different parts of the different things in the world. And I really enjoyed the challenge. So finally I got my license in the summer. And now I have 2 majors, nursing and also theology. I look back and I think if I did it all over again, I would. Maybe I would become a doctor too. If I had to start my life all over as a young man, maybe I would go to school to become a doctor. Because before I went to Catholic school, I was really interested in religion and I was fascinated with it. And that's the reason why I went there. And I felt it in my heart. There's so many different questions that I don't know the answer to. And I didn't know what my mission in life was. But altogether, I think it's important to fight for what you believe in. Even though people are telling you it's hard, you can't do it. And I felt in my heart, and I really wanted to. And there's no reason to limit yourself. I know that I can't hear, but you can succeed if you want to do what you want to do in life. Even though people try to put you down and oppress you or belittle you, just because you're deaf and you can't, don't believe them. Just keep trying. It might not be easy, though. I know many deaf people all over the world. And many times I meet most people. And they can't believe my story, and they won't believe in themselves. I'm nothing. And I try to tell them, no, that's awful. When Jesus healed a man in the Bible, what does that mean? It means be open. And when Jesus met blind people and crippled people, and he healed them, and he was able to let them see again, and he helped the people walk again who weren't able to walk. And he tried to heal a deaf man, and Jesus told him to be open, not just your ears, but your mind. You can't stay in the same situation if you're deaf and limit yourself. No, be open. Be open to the world around you. Don't limit it. That's why Jesus worded those words. Be open. You must be open for yourself. Don't close yourself in the world. It's a challenge for me and for all people. We face challenges every day. Be open, though. And the world is available for all of us. Thank you.